A lot to dig into. I want to bring in NBC's Julie Sirkin covering Capitol Hill. David Noriega is live for us in Los Angeles. Carlos Curbelo is a former Republican congressman from Florida and an MSNBC political analyst. And David Drucker is here with me in the studio. He's senior writer at The Dispatch and author of the book In Trump's Shadow. Julie, I'll start with you on the Hill. It struck me that some of the most explosive parts of this hearing so far have been between members and their home state governors. There are real political layers to this here. What has stood out to you so far?
Yeah, this hearing, as you point out, Ali, coming at a notable time with what's going on in Los Angeles, certainly taking focus of this hearing, something that was, by the way, on the books for a month as Republicans try to investigate these so-called sanctuary cities and states. But you're right, there are several members in that room who are not part of the Oversight Committee, including Democrats who are eyeing higher political office in the Senate, at the governor's level, at the presidential level. And of course, as you mentioned, Republicans, notably Elise Stefanik, who is eyeing a run for governor in New York, focusing her questions not at all three Democrats, but only at the one who currently represents her state, Kathy Hochul of New York. Listen to this back and forth here. It was notable.
We deserve a governor who stands up for law-abiding New Yorkers, doesn't put illegals first, but actually puts New Yorkers first. I appreciate
rather than going after the viral moment. I suggest you look at the facts.
I'm standing up for New Yorkers. No. Rather than addressing the illegals in New York, you are prioritizing your far-left sanctuary state policies, which you put in place with executive orders. Instead of advocating for victims, a 5-year-old who was raped, you did not. They were released because of sanctuary state policies in New York State. No amount of words is going to clean up your failed record and these horrific crimes committed in sanctuary state that you created. And with that, I yield back.
Your representation, the facts, absolutely false.
And New York Congressman Mike Lawler, also in the room, also not a member of the committee. He is also eyeing a bid for governor. So you could see that, yes, this hearing is about the immigration policies, whether you're a Democrats like the governors calling out what the administration is doing, or you're Republicans trying to shine a spotlight on the influx of migrants, the illegal immigration in some of these states, and the policies that the Democratic governors have enacted there. Through that all is an addition of sorts for those eyeing higher political office, Ali.
Yeah, as if there was any question that the policy debates that we see on Capitol Hill are so inextricably linked with the political conversation, both back home for these would-be potential governor candidates, but then also in just congressional races themselves. I mean, Congressman, you and I have talked about the implications politically of the immigration debate. When you see it there between Congresswoman Stefanik and Governor Hochul, it's fascinating, but it's also a debate that we're going to hear more of in New York and across the country. Were you surprised by the governor's response, which frankly read as flat-footed? And what does it tell you that these specific instances of violence that Republicans are putting at these governors' feet were maybe not something that they prepared for, despite the fact that this is how Republicans have been really framing this conversation for a while now?
That's right, Ali. Immigration has been the weakest issue for Democrats for a number of years now. And obviously, it's President Trump's strongest issue. This is his signature issue. This is the issue that Republicans constantly want to pivot to. They would rather talk about this over the economy, over taxes, even over the one big beautiful bill, which does include some immigration and border enforcement provisions, but is for the most part a tax bill. This is where they sense the greatest weakness, and Democrats still appear not to have a good answer. You've seen Governor Newsom in California try to pivot from immigration to abuse of power from the Trump administration. That perhaps is a strategy that some of these governors also tried to employ. I don't think they were very successful, but it is very clear that if Democrats are going to regain their footing on this issue, they need a new strategy. They need better answers, because the country, the public, despite some very aggressive enforcement immigration by the Trump administration, still appears to be behind Republicans on this issue.
I do think, David Drucker, for several days now, the reports out of the White House are that this is exactly the debate that the president wants to be having. It gives him a chance to show strength while portraying Democrats as weak. We've seen the governor of California, though, trying to insist that Trump isn't solving the problem, that he is the problem. But have either of those messages broken through their predictable silos, where Democrats and Republicans just kind of staying on their sides on this, even as we're in unprecedented waters once again?
Yeah, look, I think Democrats are trying to figure out how to handle this, because I think you hear some Democrats trying to talk about threats to democracy and whether the president is acting in contravention of the law. Other Democrats are trying to straddle the fence and talk about, of course, illegal immigration is wrong, criminality is wrong, but on the other hand, and then they go into, criticizing Trump, and I don't think they've really settled on an overarching message or theme. I think some of the challenges they face is that, they have an activist base that is opposed to some of the more, let's say, hardline positions on illegal immigration, where Republicans just say it's wrong. And most Republicans will agree that it's just wrong, and they don't have to fight internally on that. I think the other thing is that I think Democrats still want to push the argument and make it top of list that Trump is threatening democracy. You've heard that from Governor Newsom and others. And I think the challenge there is that voters, it's not something they're wrapped up in, right? They're more concerned with kitchen table issues. They're concerned about public safety. So this is a dynamic issue. Over time, voters may come to conclude that the president is overreaching. They may eventually turn on his immigration policy. But for now, he seems to be in a pretty good place. Although I would note, and this is really interesting, just this afternoon, the president put out a post saying that we have workforce issues in the hospitality industry, in the agriculture industry, and my administration is going to focus on deporting criminals, right, getting back to that, signaling that they weren't going to try and deport otherwise law-abiding citizens. The one thing on that, when we say otherwise law-abiding, look, for many people, being here illegally is in and of itself illegal. And when you're trying to defend sanctuary cities and policies, as these governors are today, it's a tough sell because you're trying to say that Trump is acting in contravention of the law, but it's okay when we do it because our motives are purer.
Yeah, I do think that's a sticking point that Democrats have not yet figured out the right talking point to. And I think it's evidenced by the fact that, of course, Tim Walz was on the ticket in 2024. And here we are barreling into 2028 with no clear new policy message in sight for the party. We'll talk about that later with some key lawmakers. But David Noriega, I want to play part of what acting ICE director said last night about what's going on the ground where you are. Take a listen to that.
I'm actually out here in LA. I've been on the ground since Saturday with the folks, seeing this stuff firsthand. And what I can tell you is it's pure anarchy.
You've also been seeing this stuff firsthand, David. Is that what you're seeing?
At this moment, Ali, decidedly not. Things have actually been pretty quiet for the last few days. Where I'm standing right now, outside this complex of federal buildings, is where most of the protests have been, targeted. Right now, there's no one out here. That's been the case in the mornings. Typically, usually things pick up in the afternoon into the evening. For the last few days, we've been seeing protesters numbering in the hundreds, acting 100% peacefully, no property damage, no vandalism, pretty much, lawfully following orders from the police to disperse, and kind of changing tactics, moving sort of quickly on these wildcat marches through the streets of downtown LA. Of course, last weekend, Ali, things were different. We did see a good amount of property damage, vandalism. We saw sort of now some, well-circulated images of people setting Waymo taxis on fire, throwing objects off of highway overpasses onto CHP patrol vehicles below. That kind of behavior has been tamped down by a overwhelming law enforcement response by local, state, and county law enforcement agencies. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that what touched off this unrest was the fact that the immigration arrests that are happening in this community are essentially indiscriminate. They're not going after targeted individuals with specific criminal histories. They're going to places like car washes and Home Depots and arresting people who happened to be there at the time. They're going to these open-air places in part because they don't need to have warrants to go to these places. They don't need to enter into a building. Same with, agricultural fields. They're arresting people like a man named Arturo Vasquez, who was arrested over the weekend at a car wash in Culver City while he just happened to be there getting his car washed with his sons. I spoke to his son, Brian, who just turned 16. Want to play you a little bit of what he said before I talk more about their situation. Take a listen.
I get it. Some people are bad. Some people should get deported, right? But my dad has no reason to get deported. He's been a nice person. He's been paying all his taxes. He has been here in the country for so long and following the law. So I don't feel like it's right. It's not right for me. For any immigrant that's just trying to provide for their families and live a good life.
Ali, regardless of what the high-level political talking points are and the way that this plays out in D.C., in a place like L.A., where undocumented people number possibly in the millions and are deeply embedded in these communities, have loved ones, have places of work, have churches, have communities that have come to know them over decades, when those people get suddenly taken off the streets with no explanation, often disappearing for days with no contact with loved ones or lawyers, there is a reaction from the community, and that reaction is what we've seen here in L.A. over the last few days. And given that these operations are continuing, in ways that people describe as being fairly aggressive, very militarized, with tactical units, carrying out these arrests, not answering questions, driving unmarked vehicles, hiding their faces, that is what this community is reacting to, and that is what I think this community is going to continue reacting to into the weekend. I just want to say, last thing, Ali, even when things have gotten raucous here, even when there have been protesters engaging in property damage and other forms of violence, what you see is what I've seen in many protest movements in the United States over the course of many years, is that you have, for the vast majority of protesters, they're people from the community who maybe are not even generally politically engaged, other than they feel they have skin in the game. They're personally affected by this. They come out, they protest peacefully, and then you have small numbers of people who do even probably consciously think of themselves as agitators engaging in this kind of behavior. It's an important thing just to keep in mind moving forward out.